I'll call this meeting to order. The committee chairs at 6 p.m. This meeting is being recorded by committee chairs. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify me at this time. Anthony from the recorder is recording. And we will do a roll call. There are no clerks today since they are all at the elections. Counselor Bottomley, I'm present. Counselor Gilmore,
Here.
Counselor Bullock,
Here.
Counselor Golob informed me she would not be here tonight. Counselor Torenzo,
Yep.
we have a quorum. President's notes, discussion on appointment of a new parliamentarian. I'm just gonna keep pushing this one back. Doesn't feel like it's really that critical right now.
Where would that even go?
It's
I think it'll
kind
just
of,
be here.
it's kind of a nebulous thing.
Well, when I
Um,
first started, we didn't have one. We brought one in because we were just having so many complicated
Don't
sort of.
say. I remember
In
that.
fact, I do, yeah. So, it's not like in the charter, it
Right.
doesn't say we have to have one.
Should we like put it out to the world that if someone wants to be the parliamentarian, please approach us? I think it's
Like-
been very
like a-
useful to have one.
With like some credentials.
Yeah, like you know what you're doing. You're not.
so you wanna put, should we put an advertisement out and just say anyone that's interested apply?
I think it would be awesome if we could put a call out and just say like, if anyone has this skill and you want to come to meetings every single month.
Yeah, it's kind of a niche.
It's a lose-lose
Yeah.
situation for
I
them.
also leave it as a tiny stipend.
Fewer.
Oh, great.
Fewer willing, less
Tiny
few able.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so we'll, I'll let the clerk know to maybe draft something to put out for that and see if anyone applies. Proposed amendment for zoning ordinance 200-39, the cluster development is going to the joint meeting, right, of EDC
Yeah.
on Thursday, September 5th, so that's taken care of. Proposal for the allowance of live-in campers and trailers submitted by Chuck Green. That would also be going to EDC.
That should be on our regular EDC meeting on the 10th.
Okay. Sure, that's,
It is on there. It looks like it's on there.
okay, good. Discussion with school superintendent about transportation director regarding school vans, special education transport. As you all know, we received an email from, the chair of the school committee on this. That, I don't know, I guess being generous, it was from a position of ignorance. But either way, I think what I'm thinking is I would like a little bit more time to maybe try to talk and see if we can't get an agreement to provide information on maybe our October meeting.
Are you saying that they would not be present at the September? Like, I know that he can't be there because of work, but the superintendent typically shows up every month. Are you saying, well, I mean, it's the beginning of the school year, so I can see why she might not be available, but.
If I could,
Yeah,
can I? Okay. The lack of a better term, the vibe right now is not looking so hot as far as when we get communications back like that from the chair of the school committee on wanting to be neither transparent nor cooperative with the other working pieces of city government. And I think that's going to be a bigger topic and a bigger issue going forward than anything else. Also, some of the publications that have been out there, well, I don't know if publication's the right word, but pronouncements and responses to emails from either council or constituents that have been forwarded over, where I was really hoping we were past the whole misinformation and toying and games. And apparently we're not. And I think that that should be addressed more quickly than not. Especially for the public to get the correct information on things that having to do with this fiscal year's budget and decisions that were made and why they were made, and comments that have been made about not only ours, but the mayor, the city's response to the budget requests from last year that are now taking effect, that the fiscal year has started, before we just roll into letting it go by the wayside until we having budget talks in, early spring of next year. Personally, I don't think this is a can I want to kick. And I don't, like I said, from the initial responses, while I know I was very appreciative of the very quick response on my rant at the full council meeting, that was very abrupt information. The responses to that were less than genuine or truthful on certain levels in the emails that we've received, or the comments that have been made publicly by the school department. And I think that those should be hashed out ahead of time. I think we need to get a good baseline of where, just because we don't, for instance, just because we don't line item oversee a school budget doesn't mean that if one of us requests information or a citizen in the community requests information, they shouldn't be stonewalled. They shouldn't have to be forced to, I mean, we can all do it through FOIA, and then you're forced to do it within 10 days. So if the response is, well, that's too much work for us to answer your questions, so we don't want to talk about anything with you, I think that's a bigger thing to address. And whether or not the school committee chair wants to attend our meetings for personal reasons or otherwise is irrelevant to me. Somebody is supposed to be there. It's a standing part of our agenda every month to have. And if we can't get the superintendent to at least show up every month and or a representative of the school committee, then I think it's a failed system where we're not able to have that communication, and then the public's not able to get any of that information either.
Yeah, so I feel like there are kind of like two things here.
There are.
There's the transportation piece.
Yes.
Yep.
And that is
Which is
just
a
like cut and
microcosm.
dry, there's no emotions,
Right.
we're just talking about
Logistics.
business. And then there's this other kind of undercurrent of why does this have to be hard?
Well, that's why I say that is I'm not saying the transportation piece can't be moved out to the next month. I'm just using that as a microcosm of
Mhm.
one item that was not, the questions weren't, those were softballs essentially overall, and those weren't even being answered. So, and not to say they weren't important questions, and we should be able to get that information relatively easily. The fact that the immediate response was to, that's too much, like answering your questions is too much work,
Right.
regardless of the question.
Oh,
That was a
Yeah.
really
Can I, sorry,
response.
Yeah.
my first question is like, what is like actually at question here? Like, what is the actual, why does Ways and Means need this information? Like, how is it pertinent to what's going on in current city council business at Ways and Means? Like, that's my first question.
First of all, because current, in my mind, is the budget
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
100% every month is the budget.
Because
That's
it's also
the
asked a
purview
few months ago.
of the city council. And so we could say, let's just wait till you have a completed budget and we'll talk about it. But these issues have been cropping up over the transportation. And then people want a financial review of it. They want to know what's going on.
And so the take is that it's like, it's better for us to do this question asking at a Ways and Means meeting than it is for, say, you to sit down. Like, I'm just thinking of last budget cycle or the budget cycle before, like Derek and I sat down with the business manager and the superintendent, and we went over the budget together in order to help us understand. And we talked about transportation a little bit. you know, because there was some questions that came up about that. I just want to say, like, I read Glenn's email a little differently with and I don't know if there's other pieces that I've not been a part of over the last couple months because I've been like a little checked out. But I actually read his email as saying that, you know, conducting a line item review of the school budget is like not necessary work of the council, which I actually agree with, like, and we say that all the time when we are going through budget, when we do go through the budget. What I read was sort of him saying, if you want this information, can you tell me like why it's pertinent if there's a vote specific to this coming up? And then maybe, I think the like last line where he says, like, can you direct your members to like,
Not give questions.
yeah, well, I think he said unless there's where there's work we're doing together, in my mind.
Where is that written? What's agreed upon? to put
Right.
Together.
Well, I think in my mind, that's actually the question for me is like, we need to now step forward and say, hey, this is an area in the budget that, I mean, I think the thing we have to say is the school budget's going to be an issue this year. And so we need to do a deeper dive maybe than we've done in past years. And so we need to work with you, school committee, on this moving forward. And that's why we need these questions. But I do just like, I think like the last thing I'll say about this issue is that, and this brings us back to, I think, last committee chairs meeting where we talked about the code of conduct. I am like committed moving forward to not approaching department heads and employees of the city in a, you know, tenor and tone that feels attacked, like you're like they're being attacked or they're being sort of like gotcha'd or, and I did feel like that happened with the superintendent last month. And I know like there's the personal, like, you know, it's like if my kid was going into
It
kindergarten.
doesn't matter about my kid. I made that very clear.
Yeah,
That was very new information that came up within 24 hours to not be discussed. The fact that this was never addressed ahead of time when the budget was presented, this was a lack of planning on, I don't care if you want to call it school committee, superintendent, principals, I don't care who wants to be ascribed the blame for it. That was piss poor planning, to use terms that I know I was so vulgar at the meeting for using the words asinine and pissed. Grow up, people. Like, just say grow up.
I
We're
just think
adults,
we have
but-
to approach, I think like at this point, it's just,
But we've softballed this so many times.
it just means we, like,
That's all.
we can't be mean to a
No,
department.
we don't have to
And
be mean.
because of
And if I came off as mean, then I think people, again, need to grow a set a little bit. Because
I feel like
I know
they have a
people-
pretty solid set, but I rewatched that segment.
so did I. And I think that I was passionate, direct, and keeping my composure because you wouldn't have wanted to heard what I really would have said if I weren't in that setting.
Yeah,
And from people who have known me for a lot of years, they're like, wow, that was nothing. That was like a nothing at all.
yeah, I don't want to
And-
make
and
it
I-
about you, Mike, because I think that it's happened like, it's happened to different department heads at different times, and I'm not saying that I'm not a person who has done this, who has taken a tone with a department head and who has, you know, sort of gotcha'd information in a moment. I'm just saying that I think that this is something that we actually are gonna have to work on moving forward because we are in a position where our revenue is not gonna be enough to fund next year's school budget.
That's why we need better budget.
Well-
We need better oversight of our school budget is what we talked about at the budget this year. About comments of wicked high administration, way too much administration. These aren't just, and what I mean by why we have to bring it back to your original question, about why we have to have these talks now is these are what people are talking about throughout the year, as John said, with budget. We may not we don't line item anybody's. We have salaries and wages and expenses. That's it. I've echoed that over and over and over again when people had problems with the police department, with the fire department, with the DPW, with whoever. And I try to echo that all the time. With the schools, we don't have that. We get one number, we
Mhm.
deal with it. And to be snubbed to say it's not our oversight, to do that, it is our oversight. The entire budgets are oversight. So in the same realm that I've and you and other members have made recommendations, let's say to the police department about, we want you to fire this person because of their improprieties and blah, blah, blah. That was a whole big thing. And I was on the other side of that in the sense of saying, we can't tell them what to do with their money, but we can, and I'll say the same thing for the schools, what we can do is make it known that these are the concerns, budgetary concerns that are coming up. And if you are unwilling to give us the information and play nice in the sense of, even if you don't feel like you got to do it, almost every other department is very forthcoming with all of their money, with all of their numbers, with all of their logistics, even if it may be overstepping on our part when asking questions when it comes down to the budget. Then my answer will be, good luck next budget season. If you don't want to explain it to us now or give the opportunity for the public to take in that explanation, because these are their questions as well. Then when the time comes and there's a cut and the narrative will be, well, the school got cut by the mayor and the city council by this much money. So now we have to throw all these teachers out and screw the kids. No, there were other options along the way, and presenting those along the way and getting those answers is part of developing an ever-moving budget. And if it's going to be one department that stonewalls the rest of the city from their information for one reason or another, then I think it needs to be called out now, not later.
Yeah, I think it's just the piece for me is it's not necessarily about saying like, here's the detrimental consequence of you guys stonewalling. Like, I think for me, it's saying the reason, like what Glenn's asking for, the reason we need this information in Ways and Means is because we are now starting to look at a budget that we're going to vote on in May. And this piece of the budget is a question. And so it is about inviting that department in to do the work with us. And just like not setting us up now for like, and maybe, I mean, maybe the framework of it doesn't actually matter, but for me, it's like setting up a relationship with the department where we have a brand new superintendent. Yeah, she's been a part of the schools for many years, but we have a brand new superintendent who just started the job like 2 months ago. And setting up that working relationship now to say, we've been doing this a couple of years. We know by the time we get to budget time, it's crazy. And so we need to work together.
This is why I need a little time,
Yeah.
because I think it's going to take a little bit more, maybe meet. There used to be originally meetings between the president, vice president, mayor,
in school.
and,
Yeah.
and that these used to happen. And we tried to resurrect that. It didn't work. Maybe we can try again, because obviously we're going to have to work together. The problem is, they've been getting resistant, so I don't want you to think I
Okay.
haven't tried.
Well, so that's the
I
piece.
sent,
And then
I
like, if
sent
that
out,
hasn't
you guys
happened-
don't even know this, but I
Yeah.
sent out an email
Okay.
to the
Between us.
superintendent.
Okay,
Because Councilor Master came to meet with the information. He wanted to talk about it in a full city council meeting. That's too much information for an update.
yeah,
So I said, go to the clerk, let's do it the right way, and then the schools have time to respond to think about it,
His questions were also raised back in May.
right? And
then
so,
were-
and
and then
I
essentially
told the
punted by
superintendent
the
to call me.
bench.
I gave her my cell phone number. If you have any questions about how things are approached, how we can answer. And then apparently that was forwarded to Glenn, who responded that.
okay,
And
okay.
no other
thank you.
department
That's
head
the
is
best.
going to
That's-
tell us or have someone else tell us to stay in our lane. Like, that is like how you get your budget cut.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So.
yeah.
So that's the, and there's a piece that's been floating, that's lurking a little bit more that I just have to mention here, and that starting right from the beginning, Leonard approached me that he didn't think we had the authority to call them to speak to city council every month, that he didn't think that
Which
the
we
schools
absolutely do.
should talk to us every month. So
Yeah.
there's been
Yeah, I
some
know that.
background of, I don't know what you want to call it, turf wars, putting a firewall between the schools and the city council, but we need this information. I would rather not start talking about public records requests and subpoenas and just see if we can resurrect this old model, which would have communication between the city council leadership, the school committee leadership, and the mayor.
Yeah,
And so that we can talk and say, is there a way, what's acceptable? Because I get like why the superintendent,
Someone's in the waiting room.
in the first week of classes would not necessarily want to deal with the entire transportation budget.
Yeah,
So that I get.
Yeah.
So maybe there was overreaction on both parts, but I think if I have a month and we can set up a meeting, that's what I would propose. So we
Yeah.
can actually try to get to a more civil place, because it hasn't started out well.
no, and that's actually like, I just don't want us to be starting out in September in an adversarial place with the school department when we have, and I mean, and I agree, Mike, that this is all information that we should have access to, the public should have access to, like, none of it is proprietary or safety or, I agree, it's the question, I think some of the back, I think Shelley answered some of the sort of like, what's the actual issue?
It's
here?
been.
And there's been other that I'm not.
Yeah, unfortunately percolating under the surface, but
Thank you.
hopefully that can be delayed. But I also wanted to say about civility, because and Mike and I have talked about this, and I am going to warn counselors that I will interrupt them going forward,
Great.
because if I think it's getting a little too much, then I'm going to give a warning. And so I just want to let everybody know that I will interrupt them. So going forward.
Get the hook, pull them off.
Yeah, yep.
And like, I appreciate that many of my fellow counselors are, hotheads and are passionate and, but I do think we have valuable people in this city and it sucks to be yelled at work.
Yep. So is that good for that? I'm going to try to hopefully set up a meeting between leadership and we can discuss how we want to approach budget.
Yeah, let's compare our calendars when we've got the
Yep,
mayor's.
so that everybody has a reasonable amount of
Okay,
time to
okay.
provide information and doesn't feel threatened. Filling of at-large vacancy. I went ahead and said we'd use the same process we used before. I believe the dates are in the packet, which are very similar to what we had before. So people have a month to submit. It closes, shoot, I'm looking for those dates. I thought it was like September 24th. Is that
It's
right?
pretty late.
Do we
August,
have,
right?
any
Yeah, and
volunteers
then-
yet?
No, I haven't heard a word yet. And then anyone who applied would come speak to committee chairs on October 1st. And then you guys a week later would put in your recommendations to me, and then we'd swear them in on the 16th. Is that right? 16th?
That would be
Yeah.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the plan. So we can hopefully get somebody in there, and hopefully people will apply. So we can get somebody in soon.
Maybe someone can write about this in the newspaper. We need applicants.
Mayor's appointments, that would go to ANO. I think that's the only thing on ANO. What are your thoughts about should they have a meeting, or should that just go right to the floor? If that's their only subject.
Actually, I was recently thinking that, I don't know if you guys got the email about one of the appointees.
Oh, yes.
And but it was a little concerning. At first I was like not concerned, and then I did some like deeper digging. And like the implication was that like the person was at the Capitol on January 6th during all of that. And so I just like do have a question about like vetting, but I guess any one of us can see this list and vet ahead of time, not just ANO, so it could just come to.
I mean, Counselor Golub was not feeling well at all tonight. so-
Yeah,
And I believe in her email, she said she would hold the meeting, so,
she did. I would suggest that we have the meeting.
okay.
If it needs to be canceled, it can always be canceled, but if we don't schedule it, we
I see what
can't
you're
later
saying, yeah.
decide.
Maybe in light of that, I think we should have a meeting just to,
Yeah, I don't know if she's gonna wanna discuss that either, but
I know, that's tough.
it did seem concerning.
Yeah.
very,
No, that's like not pleasant discussion material.
No. And talk about civility.
right,
That moves.
yeah.
That's actually what we're worried about here.
Right. So approval of MOU, that would go to Ways and Means. which I believe it's already on.
It's already there, yeah.
And then the discussion on topics. This was put on September's meeting, but this will actually be October. I think we should just give counselors, and I can always send out an email. Just by a certain date, I think they should have their questions if they want to ask specific questions, so the reps can have answers for us at the October meeting.
Yes, they're
Because it was
busy.
inadvertently put down on this month, and in their letter, they said they were free in October. So it was just a mistake. So economic development. We have that hearing.
Yes, and I talked to Tammy again last week. I will not be at that hearing, but we do have we have a quorum from EDC that agreed last week and when it was scheduled that they can be there. I'm a little concerned about public attendance for it because it is like right during the fair parade. So I'm worried about like people like getting here
Yep.
and you know, just being able, like, I mean, like literally everyone is in the fair parade, so. I'm a little concerned about that, but I guess
Could it be held remotely or?
it is a hybrid meeting. So people can zoom into it and definitely,
Isn't the parade at 4?
the parade starts at 5. So they're not even like, it, like, the parking lot isn't even empty, and I agreed to this like 2 days post-surgery, so I was on painkillers and said yes to something, and then looked at my calendar a week later and was like, oh no, I drive the truck in the parade.
Yikes, so that's set up with another board, so it would be hard that we can't like unilaterally change.
I called and tried.
What's the date?
It's the 5th, it's this Thursday. I called like a week and a half ago and tried to do something about the date, and it was, notices had already gone out, and
I have another meeting, so I can't even fill in if there's a lack of quorum.
we should have a quorum. I double checked last week. We should have a quorum from EDC there,
I'm
and
just
we,
worried about the last minute.
yeah, and we have another hearing. It comes to city council and then we hear it at the council level. So there is another opportunity for the public.
Yeah, I'm thinking we should try just because of that timeline. Like if we didn't have it on the 5th.
We can't, Tammy will kill us. I called, I tried, John, I really tried.
Let's try it.
That date is bought and paid for.
I talked to other counselors who were like, oh, I didn't realize it either was on this date, and I was like, let me see if I can do something about it, and it was like, you can't do something about it. So we get what we get. Oh.
Just migrate them.
We should mark that out on the town
Yeah,
calendar.
exactly, that would be.
Grab some,
I would not
grab
have-
some Adirondacks.
That would not have been-
On the common.
Yeah, I did not, it didn't even dawn on me when I agreed to it, and then it was when I came back to reality, I was like.
So you're having, is this right? You're having 2 meetings?
So we are holding the EDC meeting, yeah, so we have our regular EDC meeting, which we will have a discussion on the proposed amendments for the cluster developments. We will have a discussion at EDC about that, and of course, I'll take public comment at that meeting. If people are unable to come to the hearing on the 5th, I'm happy to have people.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, because I don't see that on here. So in addition, the 10th meeting.
Oh, no, it's there. It's
Is it?
just- Yeah, it's just all kind of mushy.
Oh, no, there it is.
It's like after the first bullet.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah, so that'll be our first discussion item on the 10th, and
Yep.
happy if people can't come to the hearing on the 5th to have a public comment space for them.
And then the item submitted by Counselor Garrett.
Yes, we'll have a discussion on that as well.
Okay,
And then also a discussion on the proposal of the allowance of live-in campers and trailers in Greenfield.
great. So that's all on the 10th. And appointments and ordinances will be dealing with just appointments.
You say just appointments after the
Just,
discussion we
sorry,
just
yes.
had.
The importance of appointments.
Yes. Community relations, nothing on that agenda. Is that right?
Yeah, I haven't
So we
heard
can-
anything.
Cancel that. Ways and Means on the 17th, MOU. Oh, not sure how this got here. I think we can remove the GSET item. that was something from a long time ago that keeps lingering, and I think we can just remove that unless it's needed. So it doesn't just keep popping up.
Yeah,
Because, I mean, there's no,
we can
There's
always
no
put things
financial
back on the
orders, there's
agenda.
nothing-
We have
yeah.
a process for doing that.
but I think that just keeps popping up and it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be, so we can get rid of that as a discussion item for now. Joint meeting with Board of Assessors. You're planning on doing that again, correct?
I mean, if there's any more to talk about, I mean, I haven't seen any extra questions that have been brought up since the first one, so I mean, I don't want to. I mean, if there's more to be said from the assessor's office, cool. If not, and they were just kind of using the second meeting, that's what I understood at first was we set up as two because we like get some information, have stew about any questions that arose from the public that saw it or other counselors could be then addressed again, pre-planned in that way. But if there's not, I mean, I have no problem if, I don't know about you guys, if you have more to offer or if we let you off
We
the
have
hook
some
for
other
that.
topics, but I
Yeah.
don't know that that's the meeting if you want to do them. We want to talk about individual exemptions.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that, so that'd be a continuation of that. I think that'd be fine. We should just leave that as a,
if you guys are ready for it, cool.
I think that would be good actually, because was talking to someone, I watched that meeting. And I was talking, I was talking to someone and we had questions about exemptions.
Mhm.
And especially for sort of small businesses.
I mean, if they can get those in sooner than later or come to and voice those as in the form of public comment or whatever, they can probably get them answered.
Just to be clear, the small business exemption, and there's also like an affordable housing
Mhm.
exemption. Those are not individual exemptions. Individual exemptions are things like the senior exemption, veterans. So we can certainly address the two, the larger exemptions.
Yeah.
And then if not at this meeting, in a future meeting, we have some recommendations on expanding some of the individual exemptions. We're trying to get together some numbers for you on if there would be any overlay impact to doing that. For example, right now, a senior has to be 67 as one of the, and the state allows us as young as 65. So if you did that, for example, that might cost $5,500 over the year based on our past estimates. So it's a political decision.
Sure.
that sounds great.
It would be good to get more information. I went to
Yeah.
a class through the MMA when I first got elected, which seems like, I don't know, 70 years ago. It'd be nice to get a refresher.
And then the last item on this, we will remove until we have a chance to discuss and how the schools would like to handle the discussion with city council on their budget.
So are we going to tackle the transportation piece this month, or are we gonna tackle the setting up the school town meetings piece of it? Or are we doing both?
I was thinking mostly the transportation thing, and that would probably lead to a bigger discussion with hopefully the superintendent and the school committee on how we want to go forward.
That's all.
So we're keeping that on the agenda this month or?
Well, I don't think there'll be enough,
October?
because I just don't know if we can get the information that fast. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, I can try, but I don't know that I can get a meeting set up that fast.
I don't
either.
think we can get a meeting set up that fast, because I think you and I are gonna have to compare calendars.
Oh, you mean to talk
There,
this, just talking about not at what's gonna be on the Ways and Means Committee. So we're, as far as this agenda.
but hashing out.
Yeah, as far as
Moving that out to, like,
Move it to-
October.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking.
Because as long as I've been on, there has been an understanding that these are the things that, you know, there's a Venn diagram of
Yeah.
our responsibilities and their
Yeah.
responsibilities. I feel like for a really long time, everybody was on the same page. And it feels like now we're not necessarily on the same page anymore. So it's time to sort of like reapproach it, figure out
Sure.
if we need to adapt because times have changed, or we need to adapt because personalities are changing, you know, just. But knowing what to expect is going to be important too. So
That's true.
Yeah, and that's the other bigger part, because with the budget coming up. you know, and personnel people do change, and so, and this committee is this Ways and Means wants to dig in more, which is great, I think, but, we should probably talk about that and try to make it go smoother if possible.
Yeah.
So the draft and city council meeting, we have the appointments, this cluster development. And then I guess we would have to vote to either keep this on the table or not, the opioid settlement funds, the MOU, this all looks good, and then communication items. I guess I can just make an announcement if people want to send in questions, or we can send an email, but the legislators won't be there that meeting.
They're actually going to be in October.
Yes, is
Yeah, that sounds great.
that everything?
Too much, I think so.
Wow. Guess I take a motion to adjourn?
So
Second.
Wow, all in favor?
I.
Aye. All right, thank you, everyone.